17 minutes after 7, on to this now. It's on, it's off, it's on, no, it's off for now. In a stunning reversal, the US President Donald Trump has said he will temporarily place a pause on the tariffs his administration has imposed on countries around the world, but is insisting the fight with China is still on, and it sent global stocks rocketing a little higher. Trump's U-turn yesterday, which came less than 24 hours after steep new tariffs kicked in most trading partners, followed the most intense episode of financial market volatility since the early days of COVID-19. The upheaval has erased trillions of dollars from stock markets and led to an unsettling surge in US government bond yields that appear to have caught Trump's attention finally. Have a listen.
Why you decided to put a 90-day pause?
Well, I thought that people were jumping a little bit out of line. They were getting yippy, They were getting a little bit yippy, a little bit afraid.
Getting yippy. Well, as you know, if there's one thing the market hates, it is uncertainty. How does one craft trade policy in such a tumultuous environment? Well, the person tasked with exactly that is the Minister of Trade, Industry and Competition, Pak Stau, who joins us now on the line. Minister, always a pleasure to have you on the show. Thank you for your time today.
Good morning and thank you very much.
It's been a busy little while for you, I'm sure. So since Donald Trump's return to the White House, he's repeatedly threatened an array of punitive measures on trading partners, only to revoke some of them at the last minute. But it's clear the impact has been devastating.
The impact has been huge. It's been huge on the South African markets. It's been huge on the international markets. And it has pretty much disrupted trade and projections with regards to investments from many multinational companies. And in many ways, it is about global supply chains. If you think about it, the reality is that to produce a car in South Africa, you import different components from different parts of the world. So the impact is also upstream in terms of those people that supply the components before we even send the car into the US. So companies are having to rethink and restructure their supply chains overall, and that's the part of the uncertainty that's there over and above overall interface and interaction with the US market.
The on-again, off-again approach, I said in my introduction, there's nothing the market hates more than uncertainty, quite apart from baffling leaders and spooking business executives. It really makes it difficult to forecast anything that happens next, particularly market conditions.
Extremely difficult. And part of the reality is that it's not completely off. If you think about it, what is off right now is the 30% that would have been applicable to South Africa and the different percentages, which are the reciprocal tariffs that are applicable to different countries that the US has imposed. But what remains on is the 10% across the board increase in tariffs. So it is a bit of both. So you have a bit of on and a bit of off, if you like.
So just to be clear, have we had official word that they will no longer be imposed on us, at least what was specifically targeted for South Africa?
Well, we've received the note about the decisions that were made yesterday. And our team did have interface with the U.S. Embassy yesterday with regards to the overall engagements with the U.S. So yes, we have received confirmation that in fact the 30% has actually been removed from the list, so to say.
So the U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said the pullback was the plan all along. The idea was to get all of these countries, including ourselves, to the negotiating table. Do you buy that?
It's possibly true. Part of the reality is that there is a queue of requests that the U.S. now has of countries that need to engage, including ourselves. We had always said that we will seek to engage with the U.S. We had anticipated, as they had announced, that they would make the announcements on the 2nd of April. So we had always said, let's wait for the 2nd of April, assimilate and understand what it is, and on which basis we would reach out to the U.S. and have follow-up and formal discussions with them.
Look, I'll come back to our deal, but just looking at the international picture, because he also insists that the tariff on Chinese imports will remain. In fact, it's now gone up to 125%. 100% from the previous 104% level. So, how does the further escalation of the confrontation between the world's two biggest economies affect the rest of us? I mean, you know the old saying, when two elephants fight, who suffers?
It's certainly the ground that suffers, and we're literally on the ground in this regard. These are two of our biggest trading partners. This is the second and first biggest trading partners that we have as a country, and that would certainly have impact on the trade that we do with both. The reality is that it also impacts in terms of how countries redirect their products into different parts of the world. So the tariffs that they've imposed on each other would have a huge impact on everybody else.
All right, so Trump wants a deal. What are we offering?
We haven't put something firmly on the table. We're currently engaging about what are the issues that we're going to engage with the U.S. about. What is clear from the U.S. is that they want an engagement that is mutually beneficial, if you like. They have said that they think that the tariffs and trade structures have been disproportionately skewed in our favor, and the same with many other countries. So they would want to have a discussion around that. I should say that we had already started raising with the U.S. the need to revive the trade and investment facilitation agreement that we had with the U.S. so that we're able to normalize issues about trade between the two respective countries. So we would want to build on that. It would include agricultural products. They've been part of the issues on the agenda and part of the issues in dispute. It would include issues of direct investments in the two respective countries. I should say, as South Africa, we've got some of our multinationals that are invested in the U.S. and certainly the U.S. has about 600 companies that have invested in South Africa. So we have to look at the investment opportunities both ways.
Yeah. Look, you're part of the rescue mission from what we understand. So I expect at some point you'll be returning to Washington. What would be on your agenda, and how do you convince an administration that seems to many to be making up the rules as it goes along, and also because of how capricious they are, things could change on a whim?
For us, there would be two issues that we'd have to present and engage with. I mean, you would know that South Africa and the U.S. has had discussions around geopolitical issues, around issues that they've taken views about our investment environment, around broad-based black economic empowerment, around farm killings, and a whole range of other issues that they've raised. So there are issues that we need to engage with them on the geopolitical and on the political space that are important to resolve. And we think that we are in a position to engage with them on those issues. So that's one part of the discussion that we need to have with the U.S. The second part is the trade and investment relationships that we have with the U.S. and the need to create a degree of certainty. Because as you're saying, with the levels of uncertainty, it's difficult for investors to make decisions, and investors have to make long-term decisions. These are huge capital expenditure and investment decisions that they need to make.
I mean, but on the other hand, you're dealing here with an administration that was slapping tariffs on islands populated only by penguins. Can we still rescue AGOA?
It's going to be difficult. You know, we have the trade ministers meeting in the DRC on Tuesday. So at that meeting, we'll be engaging with our, with our counterparts in Africa about how we engage on AGOA. AGOA has always been a decision by the U.S. to create access for particular products that are produced on the African continent or AGOA qualifying countries in sub-Saharan Africa. And the reality is the U.S. has said they don't want arrangements that are only one way. They now want arrangements that go both ways. So I suppose as collective African ministers, we're going to have to make decisions about how that would constitute the next round of negotiations that are taking place in June, July this year.
Most notably, the agricultural and automotive sectors will remain nervous here in South Africa. What's your message to them?
I can reassure the markets and the investors in our country that we are engaging with the U.S. We are intending to find solutions, but we're also actively engaged in discussions around finding alternative markets. We engage with different countries that we had started discussions about creating access to market for us. So we have to manage it both ways. We can't ignore the U.S., and I don't think any country can ignore the U.S. So it is important that we normalize relations with the U.S. And to the extent that there are specific issues that we need to deal with and the global issues that we need to deal with, we can reassure South Africans that we certainly would be engaging on those issues. But part of what we do need to do and are actively doing is to activate different markets. You would know that
But at best, Minister, that would be a long-term strategy, would it not?
It would be a long-term strategy. And we have to accept that it is a long-term strategy. As I said, supply chains don't just change overnight. You're going to have to reach out to those markets and ensure that you're able to agree they need to change their tariff structures and other considerations with regards to trade with us.
Pakstow, the Minister of Trade, Industry and Competition, this morning. Appreciate your time.
Current events, developing stories,
tough questions.
Your voice making a difference.
This is Breakfast with Bongani Bingwa.